Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hit Chat Chit Chat. I'm your co-host, Connor Reynolds. Besides me, wonderful and always, JP Fasone. JP, how you doing, sir? Yes, sir. And we also have Connor Burns and the Great White North. Connor, how you doing, sir?
Doing fantastic. Good to be back.
Lovely, lovely. And if you guys have noticed, we have a new member of the squad, Mr. Luke Burley. Luke, how you doing, sir?
I'm great.
Doing good. Beautiful, beautiful. So, real quick, Mr. Luke Burley is my roommate. He's an athlete of mine that I'm training with up here at Driveline. He's an athlete that I've been working with since he was about in 7th grade. So, family friend. That's why we're rooming together. And then I think it's a great opportunity for us to kind of be able to go through different stuff that he's experiencing. And one of those things is something that I want to get a little bit more information on and to be a little bit better as a trainer myself. And so we're going to be going through his motion capture today. We'll probably be going through his swings and different stuff like that in the future. Today's going to be kind of a little bit more so led by Mr. JP. And when I'm asking questions and if Burns has questions and different stuff like that. So we're going to be sharing that report. But before we get to that, that's going to be the main event. Mr. Burns, how's the season been going for you, dude?
When I saw you guys about, what was that, a couple weeks ago, probably 3 weeks ago, I was down bad, thought I was a terrible hitting coach, thought I should just quit, just forget all of that. Since then, we've been doing really well. I'm kind of got my restoration and faith now. I think I know what I'm doing a little bit. Boys are swinging it, a lot of doubles, a lot of triples, a little bit of home runs sprinkled in there. We do play wood bat up here, so actually there's no home runs. Yeah, no, boys are doing good. Our team average is up above 300 right now. OBP is looking good. So, yeah, no, we're smooth sailing right now.
Settle in a little bit. We just have to settle in. That's all.
Just took a couple months and then figured it out.
Let's go, baby. So, what would you say has been the biggest switch or turnaround? Do you think has it been an approach base? Do you think it's just the boys are kind of getting the swing of things? Has it been anything changes in the practices that you guys have been doing? What do you think has been kind of the turnaround for the boys?
I think it's a number of things. Honestly, nothing to do kind of with the swing. Like one of the biggest things is like a lot of our guys, like we go in and hit machine, curveballs, whatever, different environments. The guys are fucking whacking. And it was kind of like that was the frustrating part. I was just like, why? Like what are we doing? Why can't we fucking take that onto the field, kind of thing? It just didn't make any sense to me. So a lot of it was honestly a big thing was culture based. There was a lot more problems just with the hitting. We were just finding ways to lose games. So as a culture standpoint, my coaching, I'm a pretty chill, relaxed guy. I had to kind of change that a little bit and start fucking getting after some guys. Kind of honestly being a little bit of a dick during practices. Not in the sense of like a lot of yelling and shit, but just little stuff like, I don't know, we were fucking runners in scoring positions. We had just an insane amount of infield pop-ups, like ridiculous. So in practice, I said, anytime there's an infield pop-up, doesn't matter. It's 15 burpees, kind of that thing. Start putting some negative consequences on the line, stuff like that. And just really kind of changing the culture a little bit, like not allowing things to happen. Which was honestly a tough thing for me to do. Like I said, like I'm pretty chill. I'm definitely more of a player's coach, so it was a tough thing, kind of starting to be mean to these guys. But as well, a lot of it was approached. We didn't really have a presence at the plate. A little bit of a lack in confidence. So it was a lot of fake it till you make it. It's like, man, you got to go up to the box, like you're the fucking man. Doesn't matter what position you're in. Doesn't matter if you're the 3-hole or 10-hole, whatever that may be, right? But to have some sort of swag or something going on in the box, as well as I thought a lot of our guys were just thinking way too much up there. I had a lot of conversations, especially in high school baseball, man. It's like there's not a lot of guys that can fucking flip this, flip that, and fucking command that. Like there's a couple, But for the most part, it's like, guys, just sit fastball, be on time for it, and have your external approach, whatever that may be, and just stick with it. There's just way too much thinking going on. So it's a lot of simplification, a lot of getting after guys, and since then we've been fucking doing really well. So
Love to hear that. There's something you mentioned that someone has an opinion on. So you said something about being on time for the fastball. Mr. JP Fasone is known for walking around the facility saying timing's a myth.
The last couple weeks, it's like timing the bit.
So, want to talk more?
let's fucking hear it.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe timing's a myth, might be a little clickbaity, but the idea is that I think the window of time is a lot larger than people think, and coaches typically talk about. Just because most of the time the bat happens just terrible, and so that's why they're late or they're early. It's just because the bat pass sucks. And timing's all relative, so it's like, are you what is it relative to? Are you limited on time? Did you start swinging on time? Is the barrel late? Did you late? Were you making going? Like all of those things play a factor. So like the idea of like timing's a myth. Like, was the kid late or just probably more the like, because if he had a better bat path and he caught it deep and he was a little late, he probably hit it. But that path is trash, and so he didn't get it. So that's what I don't know why I'm so yeah. Time somebody's like, "Oh, you're just late." Like, no, he just sucks. Timing's a bit.
I honestly, I completely agree with that. But can't fucking fix a kid's bat path and he's playing it in the same AB. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely times it's like, yeah, you just got to be a little bit, or you got to like pull your hands through or something like that. Like, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing. Are you late because your sort of sucks? Or you
No, 100%. Well, and then that also like poses a question too of like, there's just a lot more factors. It's like, bat path sucks. It's like, okay, if you can't catch balls deep, then it's like, you better fucking be early and pull the shit out of it. Yeah, exactly. Right?
You're going to be late a lot. Now that window's just really small.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure when we get to the mocap, we'll
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, it's just something I feel like, I don't know, maybe it was just Twitter. There's been a lot of that, or I don't know. I kept hearing like, oh, like timing's everything. I'm like, yeah, timing's not that.
It's, well, I think the biggest thing, I can't remember who said the quote, but it's like the best hitters, it's their ability to hit off time. And it's like you look at the big leagues, it's like how often are those dudes actually like fucking on time? Not a ton. And that's the whole point of like creating like an adjustable swing.
But then the question comes to on time with what? Because obviously their barrel's on time because that's the only thing that matters. Everything else is off time. And so that's a big thing that I've just been asking kids when I'm walking around and seeing them hit. A lot of the time I'll see guys that try because the machines, the environment that's going on, it's tough. Like, it's tough. It's like 90 left-handed two seams with a mixed pitch of left-handed sliders in there. Like, it's absolutely disgusting. And so I'll go through and I'll just ask, like, how'd you feel? Like, were you on time? And generally they'll say, yes, I was. But they feel like they were on time because they got their foot down early, like every coach in the world has ever tried to tell them. They got their foot down early, and then they flew the front shoulder open, and their bat is stuck behind them, but their hands feel like they're on time. So they feel like they just have a giant hole in their swing. And you continue to ask, like, are you on time? They say yes, because they feel like they loaded on time. They strode on time. But their barrel's not even remotely close to being on time in the hitting zone where it needs to be. And so then them not even, like, I guess, understanding those different, like, types of timing and understanding that, Nothing matters except for getting the barrel to the ball. It doesn't matter how we get it there. Hunter Pence had a horrible swing. It did not look appetizing, but he got his barrel to the ball consistently enough to where it played. You have some guys that are in the minor leagues that have the prettiest, most mechanical swing that you've ever seen in your life, yet they're never going to make it to the big leagues because they can never consistently get the barrel on time to collide with the ball and do the most amount of damage, or even to do damage. I think it's perspective. Better swing would always help. Darn it. Well, with all that to be said, Mr. Burns, have you ever looked at a motion capture force play report before?
I have not. So I'm
Up there, new facility, big lab.
Actually,
no labs yet.
I'll be interested to see what that was. It called a Protus?
Proteus, yeah.
Oh, that.
Yeah.
I'd be very intrigued to see like what reports that thing can spit out though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't deal with it. That's all my brother. He knows all that shit. So he's the guy who's gonna kind of be fucking around with it here in the next couple of months. But
Well,
I'm really sorry. I was just saying I'm really interested to see like what it does for the hitters and different things like that. So it's gonna be pretty cool.
he's gonna have to come on and talk about it because like
Absolutely.
I've only seen people have them. I've never like played through it. I think that's possibly the one piece of technology Driveline doesn't have. So it'd be nice to be able to kind of get a little bit insight in it. I've seen enough facilities grab one. Interested to learn a little bit more about it, but I think we're gonna look to go through. We're gonna break down Mr. Luke Burley's motion capture report. And so without further ado, Mr. Luke Burley, if you could share the screen.
Do your job, Luke.
I'm trying my best.
All right, and then we're gonna zoom in on the motion capture, and then go to the right. Actually, yeah, and then you can just scroll to the top. So go to the very beginning. All right, so this is from May 16th. So Luke, like I said, we've been training with each other for a while. And with me getting the internship out here at Driveline, he said that he was interested in looking to come out and train out here with myself. And so therefore we were able to get him to come on out. This is going to be from his first week initial assessment. We have not retested since, but this is essentially what we're looking off of and basing everything off of when we're making our adjustment, our plans for the next like 6 to 8 weeks. That's how long we look to take in between retests. Go ahead and scroll down, Senor. So right here is the legend. So this is going to say when we are talking about the load, when we're talking about first move, when we're talking about 10% body weight, downswing, 100% body weight in contact, these are what we're referring to. Throughout there's going to be a legend of different colored lines that will also indicate the different aspects of the swing. JP, jump in at any moment if I say something wrong or if I miss something. Go ahead and scroll down, Mr. Burley. So real quick, before we're jumping in onto this page, Luke, if you don't want to talk a little bit about how you felt going through the assessment, what it was like, how you went through and did this motion capture, different things like that. How did you feel going through it?
Honestly, I mean, right before I had my first like groups session, which was pretty tough, seeing 90-mile-per-hour sliders. So that's pretty fun. But heading into it, I felt pretty confident. They set the machine to like something that's hittable. And they kind of stick you with a bunch of like those like little white balls they put like on video game characters to kind of track how your body moves and the motion. So honestly, I thought it was a pretty cool experience. So just to see also with the meeting that came up with like where I stood with like the way my body moved and where the improvements could come in. So I think it's a great tool that a lot of places don't have. So
let's go. Do you mind hitting full zoom on the Discord screen? No. Bottom right.
Over here.
Yep. Thank you, sir. And go ahead and scroll back over to the motion capture. All right, so this first initial one, I will say, I believe that when it says like 36 percentile, that is like the amount of pelvis rotation in degrees, that is 36% more than others in the facility, or he's in the 36 percentile of that much degrees of movement.
Base, everybody who's ever done what's kept on, and then you fall in the 36th percentile of that entire set. So it's lined up 100 people in our motion capture database. You could be the 36th highest published rotation on Celtic.
And does that necessarily mean that's a good thing? That's a bad thing? Is that like that's everybody? So that's not just like the higher level movers. Is that just kind of like general information to know?
Yeah, it's just going to give you a general landscape of like where does this metric, where does this guy fall in the whole subset. Sometimes higher is going to be better. Sometimes you want to be somewhere in the middle. Sometimes you want to be lower. But it just gives you a good general idea of like this is kind of where you fall with the wide variety of guys.
Beautiful. So is that something that when you're going through an athlete meeting, do you really like harp too much on the percentile of like degrees that they're at? Or is it more so this next portion when we're looking at where they actually range amongst the higher bat speed movers? I believe these shaded portions, when we're looking at this loaded position separation graph, I believe these shaded portions are everybody that swings with an average bat speed of 72 miles an hour and above. And then the solid line and then the solid dotted line, that's going to be where Mr. Luke Burley actually is at when at the loaded position. So mostly looking at the graph or the chart rather than the percentiles and stuff.
Especially with higher athletes, like I like to use the graphs and then it's a little more digestible than the percentiles. I check it when I'm looking at the reports just to kind of get a general idea of where they're at. And sometimes some graphs will seem off, and then you have to check percentiles. So the database to figure out why it's off, what we've got to fix it. But for the most part, I stick to graphics.
Beautiful. So looking at Luke's, go ahead and scroll down just a hair so that way the loaded position separation is fully. So right there, pretty much right in the middle of where the shaded portion is. Nothing necessarily standing out to you.
No, nothing crazy. I mean, maybe a little underrotated or undercoiled, but.
And then when it says torso, that blue solid line, that's going to be like waist up, and then the pelvis is going to be the hips. Beautiful. Go ahead and scroll down to the next one, and this is going to be looking at different portions of the hip-shoulder separation at different points within the swing. And one of the things that is going to kind of jump out on this chart to myself is going to be the separation at contact. One of the things that we like to see is we want to make sure that we have a good amount of hip shoulder separation at the loaded position where they're both kind of coiled. But then at contact, we want to make sure that they're both are opened up. So that way we're getting like everything through the swing rather than kind of being caught where our chest is still a little bit closed off at contact. And we're going to see that here with the torso rotation on Luke's. One thing that could be also a factor in this is just like overall timing, I would say. Like if somebody's just like really late with their like just body and they're just catching a lot of things deep. Let's say, again, you have all the little white markers on you. So you're essentially hitting your underwear, like in your boxers. There could be like people watching, and this could be like the first time for some guys that have ever like hit off of a mini hack with it on a hit tracks with force plates and people just staring at you again in your underwear. So sometimes the environment of athletes that first come in, it's going to be a little bit like intimidating. and can be a little bit just uncomfortable or unnatural. And so not necessarily taking this as the end all be all, but also it is like good information to know that, hey, we're not fully like getting the hip shoulder separation. We're not fully getting rid of that at contact, what we've built up at the loaded position.
Yeah, it's still point to bring up, and it's why we get such a big sample size in the mid tracks and blast. You would kind of check at CEO days, starting with the bat ball. Like, they typically hit the ball the other way. Like, pull it, it's high, it's low. At the end of the day, like, that's what we're trying to address. So yeah, the motion back collapse, definitely a different environment. We see some fluctuations from in training to the left, but for the most part, they did a pretty good job of kind of capturing like overall sample.
So looking at these graphs, and then also scroll down a little bit, we don't necessarily need the legend on there right there. When you're seeing this graph and we're seeing that, he's really dipping down below that blue shaded portion where the 72 mile an hour average fast speed hitters are at, what would you necessarily look at that and see and kind of like conclude that is happening, like what is happening in that swing?
Yeah. I mean, two things stayed out right away. Like you said, it doesn't get back to close to zero at contact. That shaded region typically falls to like 4 degrees close, so the court's on more closed than pelvis, to right around 10 degrees, still a little bit open. Loop balls back close to 15 degrees, still open. And you can see how much separation he's actually getting. So part of that, wrapping back to the first page, the first thing that comes to mind, it's like, well, we're starting with a pretty good amount of separation. We're kind of starting with 5 degrees of separation. So if we kind of close that up to start, maybe that brings good separation to begin with. I think the other thing that stands out, and it's something that we look for in the hitters quite a bit versus the pitching side, is timing of the sit forward separation looks to be a little bit that gets to peak separation. So less concerned with how much he's getting, even though I do think probably too much. He's getting there. So something's going on that's causing that.
Like especially when we pull up actual video. What were you saying, Bernstein?
Well, that's actually what I was gonna ask, because I've actually I've seen these graphs before. Read Driveline Hacking the Kinetic Chain, not a big deal. Go buy it. It's good stuff. That was my first question, because I like looking at his separation, like just off the top of my head, I'm like, that looks like like more than you want, and I was gonna ask if that was affecting it, and you answered my question. So
sometimes kind of this stretchy like Gumby, tall, leggy, pretty flexible. So sometimes it's just like hypermobile and like he's getting on separation. So like the first thing is like you gotta close the separation. And that kind of like gets us less separation than cool. But I think the priority number one is getting the separation closed to contact. I think the other thing too, if you scroll up a little bit, we kind of go back to Lennon. You can see how close together is downswing and its 100% body weight line are. We typically want that spread out a little bit more. So he goes from like 10% body weight. He's got a big old chunk of time between his first move and then his downswing is 30% body weight and really close together. So that kind of leads to like, okay, we're probably starting our swing relative to where our body weight is a little bit too late. Which I watched the swing, so I kind of know the stuff. But that's another thing. It's out like how far apart in defense, especially when it comes to downswing and within body weight.
So I know when we get down to a further graph that the legend is in order of how we want it to happen. Is this legend also in order of which we want the events to happen? So we want to go load, first move, 10%, downswing, 100% contact.
Yeah, for the most part.
And then so with his being flipped or rotated, and then like you said, the amount of space between it, is that then representing, is that going to be then later shown in the graph that I'm referring to as well?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, and we've seen some high level guides that don't necessarily follow that exact order, but for the most part, it's not how that's. I guess.
Anything, Bernsey?
Nope.
Beautiful. Go ahead and go on to the next graph, sir. Keep going. Right about there. Perfect. So looking at this one, I would say the biggest issues we're gonna have are gonna be like the forward bend. We have it in the pelvis and then also the torso. So we're not getting enough. Do you think that is going to be because of the extreme and late separation that we're having, that we're then trying to make it to where? So before I jump ahead into it, I'm gonna be demonstrating on Luke's camera because apparently it's not working. Our main camera, shutter. Okay, handsome. Good voice. So forward bend is going to be essentially the chest going over the plate. And so when we're looking at this graph on the left side of the pelvis angles, when we see forward bend and it is going into the negative angles, that's going to be more chest over plate. Pelvis over plate, and then torso angle forward bend. What direction would that then be? Same exact thing. So then that is then chest over the plate, and then the pelvis is the hips over plate. So is this saying that with the line being closer to 1 than it is into the shaded regions, is that then saying that we're not getting enough, that we're almost like standing up?
Very, very upright, especially the torso. So you can see where the pelvis starts to come up, kind of close to first move. Those pelvis actually starts in close to the mid-range, but his torso is very upright, almost 0. So I would imagine you probably get a lot of lumbar flexion, where we're seeing like the bottom of his spine.
Almost like a bubble butt, like twerking.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where the brain goes. Yeah, so a little bit of lumbar flexion, and then pelvis. I would assume as it starts to forward move, the pelvis and it gets to closer to 0 to kind of match with that torso angle, and then they start to work together, going down over the plate as it's into.
Beautiful. What might be, and then why I was going with it, do you think that this would be a chicken or the egg issue of the separation and how we're getting that separation closed late? Do you think that there might be a possibility that because we are not getting necessarily and staying in a good forward bend range, that we're popping up? Do you think that might be because we feel like we are late in the sense of our chest is still like very closed off when it should be open a little bit more during the swing? If that makes any sense.
Could be. I think it probably leads to some like sequencing issues down the road. Especially if his pelvics have been wrapped pretty high. So that green line there. The higher that line goes, the higher its bucket is compared to the expected. So that pelvis starts to be up. And that's probably his way of trying to like stay back on like a little longer that control or move. And so we kind of end up sliding into the rotation, which also another clue towards that would be like how close that down is. Typically, we need to accumulate late. A lot of times it's sliding forward late. But I think that the big thing that would stand out to me, or what I would kind of assume it's what it looks like when I see something like this, it's probably really tough to make that posture when you're that vertical. So you probably rely on your hands quite a bit to put it to his home, and you end up a little bit more vertical than that.
Does all that kind of make sense to you, Mr. Burley, as the athlete? like from what you've known your swing to be, and what I mean, obviously this was a month ago.
Yeah.
So we've made some changes since then. But as an athlete, you've been kind of going through and knowing what your swing has been, knowing the flaws of your swing in the sense of the batted ball, in the sense of the timing. Like you've been getting the feedback that there are things wrong in the swing, but then to actually see this information, is it starting to almost like kind of make sense and click from an athlete perspective?
Honestly, like going through it a second time is even more helpful. So I feel like when you first go through it as an athlete, you just see a bunch of numbers and like, like something's wrong. Like it's not always easy to be like, okay, like this is why the problem, like where the problem is. But honestly, going through it a second time, it even makes like the stuff we work on make a lot more sense. And like right now, just thinking like tomorrow what the focus is, just click a lot better. Like, okay, I understand a lot better why I'm so upright and why that causes like sliding and like how my hands move and stuff like that. So yeah, the short answer, yeah.
Oh yeah. Burnsy, what do you got?
I got nothing. I'm just kind of digesting all this right now. It's good stuff.
Insane, huh?
Yeah, it is. I like it. It's good shit.
Go ahead and keep moseying on, sir. And then also, keep going a little bit, right about there. Perfect. One of the things that it took me until I did like my third athlete meeting for me to like truly understand that it made everything so much easier. The bottom timing all is consistent for every single graph, and 0, 0 is contact. And when I like was first going through and like that is what made all the graphs start coming together for me as like the instructor, is that understanding that these are all consistent with at what point in the swing, like all the downswings, like the same, the downswing marker for rear arm is the same downswing marker and timing aspect when you're looking at the hip shoulder separation that we're looking up there, or like any of the graphs that we look down further. For me as the instructor or the trainer, like that was like the big like light bulb that made everything kind of go, oh, this is how it all comes together. Because previously it almost just felt like a magnifying glass just looking at one specific portion, and it kind of was difficult to bring in everything together.
Yeah. And that's why the definitions of the events are really important.
Looking at this guy, can you scroll up just here to get this title in there? Beautiful. All right, so these are going to be the different stride phases and the different parts of the body where they're at. Go ahead and go down a little bit so that way that graph's in there. Thank you, sir. I just didn't know the name of this guy. So for you looking at this JP, the one thing that I see that I don't even know if it's necessarily a big issue, but it's the most out of the shaded portion, I would say, besides the front knee flexion on the left side, is also going to be the rear elbow flexion for the rear arm. And when we're looking at that, flexion is going to be us like flexing our elbow or like flexing our bicep. So is that saying that we actually have like an extreme amount of flexion, like we're almost flexing too much throughout the swing? Now it does look like that we get to a good portion right at contact, but it almost looks like we have to fight to get to there. Is that what, am I too far off on that?
Elbow flexion, just like definition. I believe rear elbow flexion 0 would be
straight, right?
That'd be 180.
Because it's weird. You would think it's straight, but it's not. I believe straight is 90.
Yeah.
And then 180 would be like your forearm in line with your uterus.
Yeah.
Completely. So he starts with less elbow flexion.
So he's like really
Starts with less rear elbow flexion than our typical higher back CGI.
meaning that he's like more straighter armed.
And then it's like here, and then as he gets his first move, it's like he's getting more flexion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elbow flexion is like one of those distal segments that, is it make or breaking your swing? Probably not. I would say it's hard make or breaking your swing. But he gets back to a pretty good range. Like Ronald said, around downswing. I would say a lot of this just comes from like the body trying to head up and start blocking your hands. You can see that big spike in elbow flexion from the downswing. I would say the biggest thing is up me on the strike base. It's how little hip flexion he has, and how long he holds that hip flexion. You can see like that shaded region typically will increase hip flexion, drop the strike base, heading into 100% body weight, and Luke just kind of maintains the same amount of hip flexion, adds a little bit towards the end, and then loses it pretty quickly. Which it probably relates to how little anterior tilts or kind of forward bend he has in the pelvis. Anterior tilts and hip flexion is pretty heavily correlated. So it's just kind of interesting. It's pretty much hip flexion pretty much stayed in deck with same tilt back base, which once again is probably an indication that we're really sliding instead of
So in a real swing, what would that necessarily look like? So that he's essentially just sliding the hips, like everything's just staying the same.
Yeah. So you think about the angle between your pelvis and your femur, and we're measuring the anterior angle. So the angle, essentially just holding that angle exactly the same, from pretty much the top of your load, until right around where your hands are.
And what does he do?
A little more when his hands start going. So in like a typical like our higher in the shaded regions, like as you're going forward, you're gonna continue to add.
You're gonna get like more. Okay. And so he necessarily just keeps the exact same amount.
Which is also part like, well, if you scroll back up to the pelvis strap, you can see like his anterior tilt, like the forward bend of his pelvis, stays pretty consistent, and then kind of increases closer to zero as you get to that like first move line, that green line there. And so like as we're losing anterior tilt and getting closer to zero, we're gonna start to see that hip flexion get lower, just how they're correlated. So for him to maintain the same amount of hip flexion, his pelvis angle starting to increase there, probably starting to try and shift his hips backwards to try and maintain that flexion. But he's struggling to do so because his hips are so upright. It's hard to get to right another flexor in that shaded region.
Go off, King.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Intriguing, boy. Anything, Bernsey?
Facts, bro.
So go ahead and get to where like we can see the majority of the graph. And then have time at the very bottom of it. Perfect. So is this going to be something with him already being within like a lot of the shaded regions generally? Something that not necessarily going to talk too much about. The big difference on this one's going to be a change instead of looking at degrees, we're now looking at velocities. Is it up there? I think it's a crush of his is going to be the upper arm velocity. And as we talked a little bit about with his leg or his hips essentially staying in the same spot, and in terms of like degrees, that he's not really like gaining hip flexion throughout his swing, and his hips kind of being like up tall, he's not necessarily going to be able to use his body as well. So if you look at his torso velocity, 41st percentile, not necessarily the fastest, and so that's going to mean for him to be able to hit like higher speeds, his arm is going to have to like kind of be the crutch and take over for him, and so that's why I think we see that being so much faster. I believe on another here in a little bit, I think the next graph, and you don't have to go to it, Luke, but I believe we have even a higher percentile at here in a moment, if I recall. But am I correct when looking at like making that assumption when looking at this graph?
Probably accurate based on the other graphs we looked at. I think, the fact that it's 66, I would say your velocity like shows that he's starting to sit pretty fast, but yeah, there's some peaking the chain where the torso ends up being pretty slow. I mean, for your pelvis and torso to move the same speed, that's normally not good. We want to kind of see those speeds kind of increase. Because when we think about turning the pelvis fast, like the pelvis is attached to your legs, it's really tough to rotate the pelvis fast. It's a lot easier to rotate your torso fast as that energy kind of moves up. So for those speeds, it's up. And so, like you said, like the lead arm that's over and be a lot faster. That's kind of where he gets its speed gain from. It still moves pretty fast. And in upper arm velocities are the highest correlation of bat speed. So Luke has pretty good bat speed, but it's not necessarily coming from his ability to use sequencing. It's really coming from his ability to just move his arms and hands pretty fast, which isn't a bad thing. We see high level guys do that and are allowed in the past. But I think the lower torso speed definitely points out the fact that like they were really not as efficient.
Player perspective, Mr. Luke, after hearing the last this slide and the last couple slides, it's still the same idea of like making a little bit more sense and being able to like truly like illustrate and see it in your brain and kind of like put two and two together.
Yeah, for sure.
So good insight. Next row. Thank you for that in-depth discussion.
That's what I do.
So here's the one that I was talking about, pelvis forward bend in degrees. Was let's say 96th percentile?
98th.
98th percentile. So what does that mean?
So he's 90th percentile, but we got to think like these are negative numbers. So the closer you get to zero, the higher percentile.
So he's like the 90 for, or like 9, what is it again? 98. So if you took 100 hitters, he has the least amount of pelvis forward bend, except for 2 other guys. At first, really?
So what it stands like going, he ain't got no pelvis.
Man, I know the takeaway tonight.
He's a trendsetter.
Just very upright. It's kind of really interesting. And same thing for his torso.
That's even higher.
99%. So very upright. So like everything, the 2 biggest segments of the body are very, very upright. Just gonna lead to some issues for sure.
Burns, anything?
Just digesting, man. Just keep going.
All right. I'm going to keep coming to you. I just want to make sure.
I think before we move on from this page, I think the interesting thing for Luke here is as kind of off as his graphs were before, by the time we get to contact, they're pretty close to being in the shaded region. And the only thing that's probably stand out is how open pelvis is. In fact, it's kind of hanging on to the top end of that shaded region. So that's probably where I'd say like, hey, like we're really relying on opening our pelvis to get everything moving towards the baseball. And that's kind of our compensation mechanism to put us into a little bit better spot. And so open the pelvis maybe a little bit too much in contact, which makes sense with a little bit of hip slide. You're really relying on your front hip joint to open everything up. And it makes it hard to decelerate the pelvis on time. So what I always like to say is like when you get a guy like this that like early on in the swing, like little bit stripe phase, everything's pretty much out of whack, and then we get contact, it's like looks pretty good. Like that's kind of a mark to me of like a pretty good athlete. Like you're in a bad position, gotta find a way to get to at least one at contact. Just pretty good compensator, which is a good thing when you're off time. You can find a way to get back to a decent spot, but if that's kind of our A swing or A move, that's not ideal.
There we go. Lonnie, go ahead and stroll in next at. I've got one shard that I feel like I'm pretty sauce at. Or what the kids at Driveline say, soup. Freaking soup. And it's not this craft yet. Let's see here. Rear elbow flexion, second percentile. At a kid. Hey.
Yeah, for the most part, this stage isn't too crazy. I honestly, for most guys, this isn't too important. So you start to get into kind of higher level stuff like foundations might be an issue, or like maybe this flection's a little bit off. Like now they pick up a high pitch or something like that. For most lower level guys, college guys, this isn't too crazy. It just kind of like really exposes how much influence separation gets. Now how little he closes that in contact. Just because that craft is zoomed in a little bit. But for the most part.
And so just wanting to clarify, when we see a negative on the angle for hip shoulder separation, that means the chest is closed more so than the hips. And then when we see a positive number, that means the hips are more closed than the upper half. Perfect. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and scroll down. How we doing, Clint? This is upper arm velocity. Wait, scroll up just a hair. Max 88th percentile, or was that 89?
89
percentile for upper arm angular velocity. So does that mean just at any point throughout the swing, at the fastest point, he is swinging faster than pretty much majority of the, and that is what we were talking about earlier as being almost like his crutch?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's just what I would say is like that's where his bet. Some guys have lower arm speeds, but they swing that faster than kind of expected based on their arm speed because they transfer energy a little bit more efficiently. The loop like gets harder moves fast, and that's kind of where he gets his stat from. Which once again isn't necessarily bad. There's plenty of technique you that in there that do the same thing. But I think the bigger issue is like, hey, like you have all this speed and nowhere to go with it because of the lack of pelvic bend, the lack of dorsal forward bend. Like the direction is not very good. That's not very good. So it's great to move that fast, but that's not our ability standing. We don't need to move that fast. We need to move that to make one.
And when we're looking at the lead arm, you see that hand graph, and we look at the spike, it goes down and the spikes again. Those two spikes are almost near the same amount of like velocity, but they're not following the like profile of the shaded portion. So, and when we look at the very beginning, it spikes up at the very beginning, goes down, gradually goes up, spikes, comes down, goes back up again. What could be causing those like spikes? Is that like a bat tit? is that like what necessarily could be causing those things?
Yeah, so the hand's angular velocity measured in all three dimensions. So we're looking at like flexion, extension, deviation, and then rotation. And then obviously like the path in space. So it could come from a lot of different things. If guys have a lot of, big back tip, that's increase it. Guys that have a lot of pronation or supination in their hand is going to cause it. I would say for Lou, the kind of first peak is coming from that kind of added rear arm flexion as he kind of commits into his downswing that we saw earlier. You see the little spike there. And then that kind of second peak is more than likely him delivering his hands into the zone. And then he has to decelerate his hands to try and get the barrel around. And then the hands now accelerating up that.
Preach. Does that feel about right?
I feel like it's kind of hard to like realize I'm going fast and slow and fast. But I mean, like, it makes sense to like why like that path can be so inconsistent. Like I'm hitting like a slider really well one day, but I'm not hitting the fastball or vice versa. So, I mean, it makes sense, but feeling wise, like I couldn't tell you I'm going fast, slow, fast. So,
yeah, I think the like distal segments, the upper arm hand, is like tough, guys, to feel this time. And so like the folks on the pelvis, so like if we were in that meeting, I'm never getting like, you know what I mean? Like, right. I'm just not gonna about this. We were talking about affecting torso and pelvis suck, and I guess. But when we talk about your back pat, when we get to that page, I think it'll make sense of why your hand kind of looks like that.
Lonnie.
Cool.
Here's my graph. This is the one that I like semi understand the most, I believe. So this is going to be the sequencing graph. So it's telling us at what point are we accelerating and decelerating throughout the swing as well. And so this is the one that I was referring to earlier. When we're looking at this legend, those arrows are going to be the when we start decelerating that portion of the body. And so when we look at the legend, it goes pelvis, torso, upper arm, hand. We're wanting those arrows to essentially show up in that same sequence order. So we want pelvis arrow to be the first one to show up. Then we want the torso. Then we want upper arm, and then we want the hand. And we almost want them to go up in kind of like a passing off of the torch almost. So you want the like red to spike, and then the green is going to kind of like take over that spike. And then as the green is going down, the blue is going to kind of take over that spike. And that's essentially the energy flowing up throughout the kinetic chain. The muscles have what's called a stretch and shortening cycle. And so as the muscle stretches, just like a rubber band, it's going to like have that force, and the longer you hold it, the less elastic the like muscle kind of becomes. So if we're able to stretch it and then shorten it in like a quick span, that's going to be how we transfer the most amount of energy moving forward. So when those arrows can be in kind of like a straight kind of like path working its way up to contact, that's going to be us like transferring the most amount of energy easiestly. And then we also, the way that we want those to be decelerated, we also want them to accelerate in the same manner as well. So when we're first looking at, I believe it's a black line, was that downswing or like 10% body. We want the pelvis to be the first line to go through, which we do see it is. And we want upper arm, torso, and pelvis. But on this one, I believe we see the hand kind of go up a little bit. I think it goes second in order. Is that right, Luke? I can't really see that far.
I think it is, yeah.
You're colorblind. I forgot.
Yeah.
Not. Yeah, so his hand and his torso at the black line are like at the same point. where we want the hand to be like last going through. And so I think that's going to like truly show that he gets like pretty handsy, kind of like early, like the hands get going and like moving quickly. And that can kind of make it a little bit difficult to like consistently like work the kinetic chain and like transferring energy all the way up. And so I think that's why we have to get, along with the lack of forward bend and us like losing our like hip flexion, we also see that the hands are kind of like, I think that's why the hands like rip across, is because like we're not really transferring energy from the ground all the way up as well as we could be. JT.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think the only other thing I'd add on is like the pelvis velocities early are crazy high, right? Like kind of on the upper end, and then they just kind of flatten out the entire time they'll start decelerating. So, like we saw in its rotational hanging strap, it's got a lot of pelvis rotation early, particularly in the stride phase, and then at some point, limits that rotational velocity off, because he knows if he keeps rotating at that speed, like the hips are just gone, like everything's falling off. So he's kind of slowed down a little bit early, and it's just got what he pulls and stands through to try and throw there. So the speed is great in all this, but the timing of that deceleration is
Hell yeah. Burn still digesting?
I'm always digesting.
Any questions?
I think no, not quite. It's more just like it's interesting to just like with swings and stuff, man. It's just interesting how, you know, obviously like your lack of like I guess like the lack of the torso and pelvis velocity and how you've like subconsciously like still created a way to create bat speed with the upper arm, and it's like probably not even really something you're thinking about at all, and it was just your body's way of kind of adjusting to that. You know what I mean? And I don't know, hitting's just kind of fucking cool. Just this shit's cool. Like this is nerding out right now. We're just nerding out, and I love it.
I think that might be it. Maybe there's one other one. Wait, there's the rear leg and front leg force plate, and then bat path as well. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's right. 4 and 2. Right there. It's perfect. Alrighty. So, from what I've been told and how I understand it is that there are 3 different types of bat speeds that make up the bat speed. The bat speed being calculated in the motion capture is different than bat speed being calculated by blast motion. Blast motion captures bat speed by the quote unquote sweet spot, which is they identify 6 inches below the barrel. And then bat speed here, how, like, what's the definition? Like, how do they capture it?
So it's still the same definition. 6 inches from the end of the bat, but blast, since it's on the knob, is projecting based on how the angular velocity of the knob, projecting down how fast the bat can go, which is why the correct length of the bat in blast is really important. Versus in the lab, where we have a marker on 6 inches from the end of the bat that is measuring exactly how fast that marker is moving. So it's not necessarily a projection or an estimation. It's just kind of more exact bat.
Hell yeah. And so when you have the 3 different types of bat speed, you have the X, Z, and Y. They're listed up there, but bat speed X is going to be the bat speed going from catcher to the pitcher. And then Z is going to be measuring the bat speed of like the attack angle. So the bat moving from the ground up. And then Y plane is going to be thinking of going from like first to third base or third base to first base. So how fast we move in the sense like going from in the zone to like as a righty third base side of the field. And so those 3 get calculated and put together, and then that's how we get the bat speed, like full one. What I would ask you, JP, is when you're looking at it's like the Z towards the sky, Luke has a negative 0.7. What the hell does that mean?
Yeah. So if we can think back to physics class in high school, and we're looking at vector arithmetic.
Which, hold on. I don't know. Burns, did you ever take a physics class in high school?
Hell yeah, brother.
Luke, did you?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Shout out to Brighton, baby.
So Luke and Burns, you guys don't talk about vector arithmetic, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll coach rounds up a little bit here on. So if we take a velocity in a direction, it's a vector now. So it's the speed and the direction. That's what's good. If you think about an XYZ coordinate system, and from the origin, I make a vector going in a certain direction. I can draw right triangles in each plane. So I could drop a line from that vector to the next plane, and I would get how fast that vector is moving in just that point. And then I can do that for the other 3 planes. So we're essentially splitting up your bat speed vector into just the speed with a designated direction. So when we're looking at like bat speed y, it's just the part of the bat speed. If I just look at the bat moving in just a z plane, that's how fast. But
yeah, so when it says negative 0.7, does that mean negative that his bat is moving fast essentially from like behind him? Like when we say working behind the ball, like turning the barrel behind the ball, does that mean him going from start of the swing into contact is moving at 0.7? Or is that then also saying that from contact to the finishes of the swing, or is that a combination of those together? Just at contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
the numbers on top are just
Okay.
So JP, if he had let's say he had an attack angle of 8, he'd probably have a positive z mile per hour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's because he has a negative attack angle or something?
Because it's swinging down, and the z vector is only up. So like if he's swinging down, there's no velocity up. It's going to be a negative, right? But if he's swinging up, he's going to have like I don't know, like it'd be like 5 to like 10 miles per hour up.
Okay. And then the Y one, is that as that contact, how fast he's essentially like pulling?
So it's not necessarily pulling across like you would think like a ping pong or tennis shot, getting it some slice. But you can think about it more like pivoting like a door.
Okay.
That's probably a better way.
So if he was a lefty, would that be a positive 8.3?
Yes. Actually, no, because it's standard to just the full side, not necessarily left field.
Okay.
So it's full side.
So when he has a negative Z plane score, that means he's swinging negative, like with a negative attack angle. What does it mean when he has a negative Y plane?
So his bat is essentially moving towards just 8 degrees off of the center.
So it's not like flush. It's not eye contact.
Yeah,
It has like a little like.
Yeah, the way I would think about it is like the angle of his bat. If I drew a line from the pitcher's mound to home plate, the angle of this bat would be pointed towards the kind of like second baseman area.
So like the barrel would be pointed towards the second baseman. And where do we want it to be essentially at a contact?
Depends. It depends. It depends on pitch location. It depends on swing type. What I think is more valuable looking at the bat draft or age is like basically just bat speed. If there's crazy outlier in one of the other ones, then maybe that's something to look into. Like for example, in the pro off season, we had a guy that was like 16 miles an hour positive Z direction. Like that's way too much bat speed going to both sides. So like big turnover, like even hit a bunch of foul balls. Like that's a big outlier. What I think is more beneficial is looking at that bat speed draft there, because you can see those different velocities and how they're interacting over time. So we can see, like you're talking about, is the barrel working deep. We can see how fast it's moving in certain directions early on in the swing phase. So if you zoom in on that graph there, that first graph, that speed, that level, once again, you will what you will screen view of that one.
Uh-oh.
And then on the, just click on it like that.
My fault.
And then, no, you're fine. It was going to happen no matter what. And then click on that. Yep.
Okay. And then,
So yeah, you're going to have to square that up first. Perfect.
wow.
Magician.
That's what I do.
Good job, Jamie.
Like we were talking about like the hand speed stuff. Like looking at his X direction bat speed, so that purple guy there, dark gray.
Still lost.
That purple line there, you can see how far below that purple line dips compared to our shaded region. And this is where we can really rely on the shaded region, because like, these are the guys that swing bat fast. And for the most part, these are higher level guys. So that purple line dips pretty low. So that tells me like his bat speed early on in his swing is moving more towards the opposite field than our typical high bat speed guy. And then when he comes back to the other side and starts turning the barrel to the pole side, or excuse me, X is to the mount. This is to the mount. X into the mount. So he starts moving his barrel away from the mount, at 30 behind him, essentially, letting the barrel work away from his body, a lot faster than our higher bat speed guys. And then when he starts bringing the bat back towards the positive direction, he ends up on the other side of that shaded region. So that kind of leads me to believe like his bat is pretty vertically, start moving this way, and then he moves it back quite a bit towards the goof down. And then the Y direction, which is the pole side, same kind of thing. He starts pretty low on that shaded region, that green line there. So the bat could work towards the opposite field, and then he ends up kind of on the other side of that shaded region.
So that'd be like a cast and yank.
Yeah, it'd be that would kind of be an extreme version of what we're seeing here. But yeah, kind of pushing the barrel away from itself, and kind of down, and then pulling everything back.
And then if that dark green line for Y was on the other side, was on the extreme other side, would that be super like knob to ball, like inside outside?
Yeah, could be knob to ball. Or if he was on the other side, that would be him turning the bat a little bit quicker to the flip side. So he'd probably be pivoting around the knob.
Oh, okay.
And the other thing you see is that Z, like same thing, just way below the range. So very steep down, a lot of bat speed going down towards the ground. So we're kind of like out, down, and like towards the opposite fields and stuff like this way. Like you're doing like a backhand tennis serve, or kind of like a forehand tennis serve. Everything's down and then away from the body, and then we start to kind of pull everything back across. And up.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, like especially in hit tracks, like struggling to get the outside pitch, like makes sense. So, learning a lot. Yeah. Bless you.
Thanks. Next graph, unless Burns has something. Good talks.
No, I don't.
It's crazy, huh, Burns?
It is crazy, but this is helping me, like, especially like just reading Hacking the Connect chain and going through it. Like, I was understanding some of it, but it's tough to just look at it and read about it rather than actually, like, you guys are like providing good context to it. So I'm actually starting to understand this shit a lot better.
So this graph for me was like the graph that kind of like allowed everything to click. For me, like in this, like obviously, like not all of this shit is clicked, but like in reading these graphs and how they like work in the sense of like the swing and connecting them to the paper. I was like a high school athletic trainer for 3 years. And so the basic like shit is medial, lateral, anterior, posterior. You have your ACL, anterior, something ligament, your PCL, and then you have like your UCL, PCL, and different stuff like that. So like I was able to like understand this as well when looking at like a graph, because if you have like a guy, and how I've been describing it is if we're looking at the anterior posterior. So when you see on the rear leg graph, when you see the anterior posterior line go up and then back down, that's the foot essentially rocking onto its toe. So think of like Michael Jackson. Has been like a way for me to kind of remember that when he like would rock onto his toes and come back. So that's essentially when I've called it in the past like a weightless rear leg, when the foot starts to turn and we like kind of get onto the toe and we start turning that back foot and then we come back down onto it. Medial lateral is where medial is going to the middle of your body. So if you rock onto like the inside of your feet is medial, and then rocking to the outside of your feet is going to be lateral. So generally, like if you roll your ankle, you're generally going to roll it laterally. That is then when you're looking at it, if you have a guy that's like very jumpy, they're going to get like pretty medial more so than they are going to be lateral. And then the vertical is going to be how much force you're putting into the ground. And so as we see, as the rear leg goes down more, so like as we're transitioning weight in from off of the back foot into the front foot, I think that's where we see the graph switch. Am I correct on that? So like how the rear leg graph starts up high, that's because we're like on the back foot for the load, and then it goes down. That's when the front leg graph spikes up.
So not necessarily. So the front leg graph starts just before its downswing.
Okay.
And the time things are a little bit different on your speed. Because lead leg force happens quickly, so they've stretched that time step out. So you can see it's like from negative 0.15, and then they're time stamped every 100th or under the 500th of a second, versus on the rear leg graph it's every 0.2 of a second. So a little bit more stretched out, and the event labels are a little bit.
I gotcha. When I was going through medial lateral, anterior, posterior.
Okay. The only thing I would say is when you start seeing an anterior posterior graph matrix, it's not necessarily the foot is like unweighted. It's more that the force being applied is more.
I gotcha. So like the heel's coming up, toes still on the ground.
Yeah, like that back leg is starting to push. Essentially, your back leg is pushing away from the fleet, but the force is
that little vector line, which I can't get yet still.
So yeah, all makes sense. I think like the big thing with Luke is how quickly it's rear leg force drops off. And I would probably argue that the medial or anterior posterior force is way too high. So we do really rely on pushing into our toes. And we lose a lot of force that rear leg quickly. Which once you get probably another indication that we're going to get you up on the side a little bit.
And real quick, Luke, I'll switch you. Actually, you can see right there. I'm going to pull up the video of him hitting, and it's all going to make sense. This whole graph thing is going to come together. Also, check out, I don't know if you've ever tried this. I feel like I'm a genius. I have all my hitters right here. And it's just like hot links to their like individual track. Dang it. Well, one day you'll see it. All right. Where's my mouse? Oh, there it is. Okay. Actually, I think there's a straight to right here. There we go. So here's a swing. Oh, can you see it, Burns?
Yeah.
So I was just gonna keep cycling through. So this is where we have like the lack of pelvis and torso bend. This is where we see the lack of hip flexion stay consistent. And then we'll see the upper arm kind of like take over and rip through very, very quickly, giving a lot of bat speed. And electric side in 3, 2, 1. Michael Jackson, he.
And now I understand why the 10% of your body weight comes before what's the green line again? Yeah. Now that makes sense.
Yeah, and you really see why the downswing comes like right as he gets 100% body weight. The swing really doesn't start until he gets all the way up.
Yeah, a couple tweaks. Fucking look a little bit like Shohei here. Just fucking make a couple tweaks.
I am sure.
But I think the interesting part here is like this is where it's a little bit easier to see. Like when we were talking about him maintaining hip flexion as his pelvis starts to tip upwards, you can see like his weight starts to shift back towards the track, and then weight starts to make forward. So his hips are kind of working up, but he maintains that hip flexion. He essentially shifts his feet backward to kind of like continue to maintain that angle, which sets him in the kind of like side bendy torso position. And so there's just no room for the hands to actually rotate around the torso. And so that's why we see like that speed grasp. We talk about it working like down and away from his body, because that's the only space for his hands to actually start to rotate for your generate speed.
Money. Burns, anything else, sir? That's kind of like the report.
Oh, that's it was cool to go through that. I don't really have anything. That was a fucking shit ton of information.
Yeah.
That was a lot. But no, it's sweet to kind of see exactly what that process looks like.
So
It's just like it's good information for me, but it's like, fuck, man, I like with this type of stuff, it's like I just kind of have my eyes. Like I can use I can use slow-mo video and stuff like that, but like I just do not have remotely the technology to even
And
any of that shit.
what I will say is for anyone out there that is like truly wanting to like possibly see if you can get like force plate information and you're balling on a budget, I don't know how validated they are, but there are like shoe soles that you can get that will have like an iPhone app that you can like pull up and you can see at like, is your pressure gain more medial, lateral, anterior, posterior, different things like that. And so you'd be able to like, if you wanted to figure out a way, you could technically like pair that up with a slow motion video and look at that, and then also be looking at like the, I don't know how well blast motion does the actual swing when you look into like the skeleton or like the video form, but then you can almost like look at bat path like that with force plate information. And then I know HitTrax is making it to where they have biomechanical information on it as well. You know, a lot of, well, not a lot, but a few different ways that if anyone truly is interested to get some of that information in there. I think it would be interesting. Luke, do you want to kind of talk about what adjustments we've made and what you've done with your swing from looking at this information and what changes we've made over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, and just kind of like going over like tonight, like the biggest focus is for sure like my tilt and like the way my pelvis sticks out. And it's funny you mentioned Shohei because now we have a leg kick again. But I think what's nice about that is it forces me, when I do it correctly and get a high leg kick, it forces me to kick my hips back out and stay balanced longer, I think. So it's kind of interesting seeing the adjustments you'll make and like the better consistency you can get out of it and how it helps your swing. So just it's a lot of info. So
yeah. And it's like Bert said, it's something everybody has realistically with deep dives and all this, but like we talked to an athlete about this, what they take sure over deep as they did.
Very true.
But I think the big takeaway is getting a little bit more into your tilt, a little bit plate, and really just starting that swing. It starts like downswing goes a lot earlier. Is gonna help. Like it'll be interesting to see when you read that in a couple of weeks and kind of go back to it and say like it's having changes. It's got better. It didn't. What is up here?
And just for like the record, for anyone curious, Luke hit a ball, I think it was 104 at the mocap. His average there is top 8, I believe, was like 101. Yeah.
101, 102. Sorry. No, it's that mile per hour matters.
Yeah, so like
You hit ball.
I couldn't tell you that. So
I can't remember what it was either. But like standard deviation of like launch angle was pretty high. So like we were pretty inconsistent with where we hit it, but like when we hit it like hard, it was pretty much in a good spot. So like not at all saying like Luke has like a shitty swing. Like we are not saying that he's a bad ball player. Not saying that he's a shitty ball player. I'm saying we have a lot of opportunity to get better, is what I think we're trying to allude to. And so understanding like the context of that, and like just because like, you know, you could have, I think, not great motion capture numbers, I think is going to make you rely more so on athleticism and like hopefully not being in a higher competitive environment. The more competitive the environment, I think the cleaner you're going to have to be on like the motion capture. But still having like a dog and being athletic is going to be like pretty important. We talked about at the very beginning, like if timing's a myth. If you can pretty much get your barrel in the right position at the right time at contact, good things can happen. But the odds and consistency of that being the case, I think, can be a little bit more difficult if you're not there.
Yeah, and it's like shit about that. It's like you hate to go, you know. Which is why like the first thing you always talk about, like losing bad ball, absolutely bad change. I like said, move like lost your deviation, how they did it. And so like whatever we're changing, but if his motion capture looks insane, his next three tests and all that ball looks better. any of us complaining. Nope. No. You know what I mean? So yeah, 100%.
Fuck yeah.
It all backs down to, do you hit good? That's what matters. You hit the ball good.
I hope so.
Beautiful, gentlemen. For anyone that doesn't know, today we're recording on Father's Day, so shout out to all the fathers out there. Thank you guys. Also want to give a thank you. We did have technical difficulties before recording this, so thank you, JP, for sticking around. Thank you, Burns. Thank you to Luke for sticking around through that. So outside of that, do you guys have anything? Good to be back.
Good to be back.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I appreciate it. I know we all do. And until next time, thank you. Peace.